In the coming week, the airwaves, well, they'll be swamped with the words impeachment inquiry.
The center of this new impeachment inquiry.
We call it an impeachment inquiry.
Before launching an impeachment inquiry,
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announces an impeachment inquiry.
The government whistleblower who set off the impeachment inquiry.
We really only have one topic to discuss.
Here's a live look at where the high-stakes hearing with the acting director of national intelligence.
What is in that whistleblower's complaint?
It is in the Constitution.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo subpoenaed for Ukraine documents.
These past 10 days in September may prove pivotal. Key moment in the impeachment battle.
What I think has shifted is sort of the moral implications inside the Democratic caucus.
Donald Trump will leave Congress, in my view, no choice but to initiate impeachment.
Oy vey, as my loving grandma used to say. Don't get me wrong, we have a corrupt president. Not exactly breaking news. Should he be impeached? Yeah, for about 25 things. But do you need me to tell you that? Do you need Status Coup to cover this wall to wall? I don't think so. But let me tell you something else that's very scandalous. The fact that Flint, Michigan still does not have clean water 5.5 years later. The fact that Newark, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Cleveland, parts of Florida, parts of California, parts of Massachusetts, Detroit.
So the residents have had to bear this burden of the city screwing up, the state screwing up.
So this issue about water is a growing crisis in the Midwest, if you ask me.
And many other cities in America also have water problems. Another scandal. Black men continued to be executed by the police in the United Corporations of America.
So it's many inconsistencies that's in the situation. So we know, that it's plain out murder.
I understand or have some understanding of police culture, that they like to protect their own.
For years and decades, it's been an open season for black men.
After they dragged him for several feet, they put him back on the ground face down.
Another scandal. State parties all over the country, Democratic state parties, are screwing local progressive candidates, just like the DNC screwed Bernie Sanders in 2016. Another scandal. Fracking and these crude oil, natural gas, totally unnecessary, totally toxic pipelines are being built at a record rapid pace, and there are fighters on the ground getting no media coverage.
Since when is profit more important than water? When is profit more important than people?
So, if you want 24/7 Trump, 24/7 impeachment, 24/7 Ukraine, 24/7 Russia, whatever other scandal of the day, not your guy. But if you want on the ground, in the field reporting of the actual, true, long-lasting, happening way before Trump scandals in America, become a member. StatusCout.com/join for as low as a cup of coffee a month. StatusCout.com/join. Help us build the media revolution. We go out in the field. We've been all over this country in the last 2 years.
Standing Rock. I've been with you. I've been with you since Standing Rock.
Wow, you got me on right now. We're doing it, baby. We're going to South Bend. It's time you show the real Mayor Pete.
In 100 days, they tore down 1,000 houses in 100 days.
Thank you, whether it's Standing Rock or Flint or everything else you do. You know, you guys, it's not even like watching news. It's just watching truth, you know.
It's not me and you, Jordan. It's the ruling class. It's David Koch. It's the Walton family, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. It's them, not us, that benefit from these illegal offensive wars.
Come on over here. Whoa!
We're here at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and you are going to see live the actual caucus process. We are here.
We go out in the field, and we give the microphone back to the people.
Yo! Cool! I know who you are, yo! How you doing, man? You the man, yo!
Unmarked pills, okay.
Ooh, essential oils, purification. Oh, peppermint. La la la. Love it.
I am worried about Jordan, testing positive. He doesn't have any breathing difficulties right now, but he definitely has a cough that's been really bad and that's been hurting his chest.
That's Fury right there. I've cleared out the desk and now got my drill a hole and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully well. I know a general idea of what I want, essentially, so I'll try and get all this down to about a minute, get the main points, especially I got 2 videos at least for Flint.
The bottom line is, it's Sunday morning, I'm preparing for my Sunday live stream, which usually takes me about 2 hours to prepare for before the live stream. And I got an email from a viewer.
Hey guys, Jen Dice here with a behind the scenes video. First of all, thank you so much for being a member. It's because of you guys that Jamal and I are able to be here. We can't thank you enough. It means just the world to us.
Millions and millions of people have been laid off. Millions more have had their hours cut. We're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment?
$1,200 in 3 months makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Everybody should be paying attention to what's going on because this is happening in every county, not just Louisville, Kentucky. And that's why the world is like, wait a minute, enough's enough.
And one thing I do know is if you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And it seems like we continue to be on the menu.
I don't want to have to lose everything that we worked really hard for. We've been struggling for 5 years, and then we finally got everything together, and it just instantly went away.
Literally driving across the country during the pandemic, talking to people, finding out what's going on.
There are people such as yourself and other people that are telling the true story of what is happening.
All of these black people have been assassinated by police in this city, and none of them have been brought to justice.
People don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky.
If somebody calls you screaming for help at 911, they never treated her. They never came to her apartment, nothing.
Vote. Vote. And do what's right in your heart, because change comes from within. So as long as your heart is pure and you're doing what's right, that's what matters.
Once upon a time, there was truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan, live, second time today. We September 23rd. I was live a little bit earlier with the just horrible injustice of no real charges being filed against any of the Louisville police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor. Only one officer was charged with basically a frivolous charge that might put him in jail for a max of 5 years. So go check out my live stream from earlier if you want to know what happened. But essentially, no officers will be charged. Only one officer will be charged, and the charges against him are not even related to the shooting into Breonna Taylor's apartment. They're charging him with wanton endangerment, which in Kentucky is up to 5 years in jail for the bullets that went into a different apartment. For Breonna Taylor, no murder, no manslaughter, nothing. So I thought, I have an interview that Tina did, Tina-Desiree Berg, an independent journalist in Los Angeles. She interviewed a whistleblower by the name of Alex Salazar, who my beautiful fiance actually alerted me to Alex. She interviewed Alex, and I was going to wait to air it probably for the weekend, but I thought today is the day to air this because another example of police getting away with murder. So what better day to air a long, explosive interview? I mean, wait till you see this interview with an LAPD whistleblower who was once in the LAPD, who openly talks about the fact that he became racist in the police department. He openly talks about the PTSD that he and other officers walk around with daily that is not treated. He openly talks about the blue wall of silence. I watched most of this interview, and it's honestly one of the most riveting things I've seen in a while. So I'm going to air that for you in full. We also just sent an email. If you're on our email list, if you're not, go to statuscoup.com and enter your email, alerting you that Jen is now on her second flight. She'll be getting to Portland, Oregon tonight for her reporting trip. So we just sent you out an email with the deets of what she'll be covering over the next few days. She's going to be in Portland, Oregon, then she's going to San Diego, then Los Angeles, possibly some other areas. So we created a brand new fundraising page just for this trip that's going to be both an area you could contribute to this in the field reporting, as well as for Jen to update you with photos and updates on her travels. So I want to thank already, got a few donations in for this trip. I just put the link in the super chat. Thank you to Deborah, $100. Holy cow, Deborah. Thank you, Deborah. Jennifer, $10 in the road trip fundraiser. Also, let me see, doesn't say the name, but somebody left $5. So definitely appreciate it. If you can, chip in. It costs a lot of money to report in the field. There's the link, and I'll drop it in throughout the interview we're about to air. Please press the like button. We got 250 people watching. 144 of you have pressed the like button. It's the thumbs up button right under the video. More people that press like, the more people that will see this live stream. And I'll be dropping in the road trip fundraiser link in the super chat while the interview airs, as well as other things. So feel free to leave a super chat too. Without further ado, here is Tina-Desiree Berg, an independent journalist who does great work for us, and her interview with Los Angeles Police Department whistleblower Alex Salazar. And share this live stream in addition to pressing the like button.
Hi, I'm Tina-Desiree Berg, and today I'm very excited to have Alex Salazar here in the studio. Alex is a former LAPD police officer, and he is now what we would call a lamplighter. He's exposing truth on police tactics, problems with the code of silence, and some of the recent issues we've seen within law enforcement. So welcome, Alex.
Hi, Tina. I'm very happy to be here.
Right on. So I first wanted to talk to you. You had some sort of a come to Jesus moment where you realized the space that you were in within the LAPD. You were in the Rampart Division, I know. And the Rampart Division, for folks that don't know, this is a division that experienced a lot of scandal back in the mid-90s. They were embroiled with issues of racism. We had police officers that had been dealing drugs, addicted to narcotics, etc. So you went through that experience. But what was the moment when you realized this was not the position you wanted to be in and that you wanted to start exposing some of the things that were going on?
Former police officer Alex Salazar was a bad cop. By his own admission, very bad. Like a lot of once good police, the streets changed him. He saw a lot of ugliness, the lines became blurred, the job ground him down, and he crossed the line. Repeatedly.
To quote Nietzsche, those who chase monsters need to be careful that they don't become monsters.
Well, actually, Tina, it wasn't until about a year or so after I left the department because I was actually part of the problem. Okay, I had been brainwashed. I had been placed into that subculture believing that I was one of the good guys and that I was doing the right thing. So about a year or so after I left law enforcement, I began looking on the computer. I had just gotten my tower computer. Yeah. You got mail, the whole AOL screeching, that noise. Yeah. And so one of the first things I punched into the computer was police stress. And up came this PTSD, what do they call it?
Post-traumatic stress.
Right, post-traumatic stress disorder, right.
Something similar to what the vets have.
Right, the veterans, right. But, I had never heard about it before. I was going to the department psychologist, and basically he never told me not once, Alex, you're having these problems because you're traumatized. There was no discussion on that or whatever. And I didn't feel like I had to tell him what was really going on through my mind. So after I punched in PTSD, the acronym, that's what I was looking for. Right. After I punched in police stress, up came this acronym, PTSD, and that's when the light went off, when it began laying out the symptomology of hypervigilance, bad dreams, nervousness, acting out, all these addictions and all these things. And so it fit me to a T. And so at that moment, that was the aha moment, the light went off. And then I began looking at it as being responsible for the suicides of several people that I had worked with, 6 to be exact, people who took their lives because they were traumatized.
Right, which makes sense. I wanted to ask you, you had a situation that you told me about where you were in an off-duty moment, so you weren't actually working at that moment, but you encountered a woman that was being robbed by, I believe, some gang members, and you stepped in and you protected her, and you ended up getting hit by a car. What was that like? Because I think you mentioned that this was like the impetus for having to toughen up, and you got harassed by your fellow LAPD officers that were like, why didn't you just take those guys out? Why did you try to, just apprehend them? Like, walk us through that a little bit, because I think that's an interesting sort of bridgeway into where you get into the psychology of why a lot of the LAPD officers think the way they think.
Right. Well, it was 1991. It was approximately 6 months after the Rodney King meeting, and that was the first viral video ever, just to mention that.
Right.
And so here it was on a Saturday morning, give or take, and I was driving southbound on Broadway at 8th Street, and I look over to my right, and there's a street robbery going on. A young woman with her daughter was being attacked by a young man, gangbanger type, who's reaching at her neck and trying to take off her chain, which he did. And so I saw this happening, and I was supposed to go to a wedding that day with my then wife, and just kind of entered my mind. But then as soon as the guy started running, I ended up following him, and I cut him off. I drove past him. I got out of my car, and as he's running past me, I kind of just snatched him, threw him against the wall, identified myself as a police officer, and I told him he was under arrest. And so he began screaming at the top of his lungs, no hice nada, meaning I didn't do anything. I told him, look, I saw you rob this woman who's coming up to me right now. And she did. She came up and began telling me, and I told her that I'd seen the robbery taking place. I told her to go call the police, 911, and she left. Meanwhile, while I'm holding on to this guy, 6 other gangbangers come out. They start jeering at me. They start asking me, who are you? And I told them, I'm the police, get the heck out of here. And those type of words, right? And
get the beep.
And then I got pushed, and the guy that I'm holding on to that had stole the necklace, that was robbing the woman, took off running. So as I started chasing after him down the street on 8th and Broadway.
And you had your service weapon on you at that moment?
Yes, I had my 2-inch revolver, snub-nose revolver in my right front pants pocket. I chased after him. And then as I'm chasing after him, they start breaking the windows of my car, his buddies, who had remained behind. So I go back and I say, forget this guy now. These guys are wrecking my brand new car. And I start fighting with them in the middle of the street. And so at this point, I'm forced out into the street. Traffic is coming behind us. I have my gun pointed at them. I'm yelling.
So you had pulled your weapon
I pulled out my weapon at this point, and I'm yelling, police. The way they spit out, I'm going to shoot you in Spanish and English. I'm just yelling really loud. And that's when things really started to slow down for me. I'd never experienced my life going in slow motion at that moment, as I'm just wondering, what the hell am I doing here in the middle of the street, downtown Los Angeles, broad daylight, with 6 gangbangers advancing on me. I'm supposed to be at a wedding there in about 2 hours, and it was pretty obvious I wasn't going to go anywhere at this point. So as I'm pointing my gun at them and they're coming at me, a car comes out of nowhere, runs me over, breaks my right ankle, and I go flying, over the hood. And when I land on the ground, I land on my back, my side, and I try to get up, and I notice that my right ankle is now almost to my ear. And so I'm horrified, of course, and all I can say is, and repeat, is shit, shit, shit. And I'm looking at these guys still continuing to break the car windows. They stole my police uniforms, my badge, my wallet. I even had another gun in there that was taken. And so I lay there for what seemed like eternity. And eventually I heard the sounds of the ambulances. I saw the helicopter up above, and everybody and their mother arrived after that. And so it should have been a happy story. They tried to make me a hero and give me all these awards. They wanted to give me the Medal of Valor. I said, no, I don't want that. This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I signed up for. And so I was out of commission for about 2 months after that, 2 to 3 months. I later returned to work after 3 months. I was on crutches, and they had me doing inside work. But when I returned, I had my partners tell me, why don't you shoot the MFer? Why don't you kill him? And at that particular time, I didn't even think about that. I hadn't seen myself, well, I need to kill these guys, even though they're kicking my ass. I didn't feel that necessary, that point, that anger to shoot them, or that fear. I was scared, but I didn't feel like, I need to shoot them because they're kicking my ass. I didn't see it like that at that moment. But all that changed, of course, when I had my partner second guessing me, telling me, kill them, shoot them, why'd you get involved? I was thinking this could be my mom, it could be my wife, it could be it could be anybody.
They're still human beings.
And so that was my whole reason for getting involved. But afterwards, after I began thinking about it, I didn't realize at that time that I had already been traumatized. My brain that was once whole, thinking normal, was now scrambled because I almost started drinking. Mm-hmm. I was having the nightmares. I was having all these issues, and even with my wife, I was waking up screaming, and within about a year or so, year and a half, we were getting divorced.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went that way for several years. I didn't realize at that time, like I said, that I was severely traumatized. The following year, in 1992, we had the full-blown LA riots.
Right.
And that only exacerbated my PTSD, being involved in a situation where a very large city, it almost seemed like we were in wartime conditions, with over 60 people dying, all the buildings, big buildings around my district on fire. I mean, all over the city. It was just very terrifying. And so I had more incidents there too. I could go on to describe them, but you can only imagine what was
Let's talk about that a little bit, because the LA riots, we're talking about 1992 now, those came out of the Rodney King beating, which you mentioned earlier. This was one of the first police beatings that we had on video where people were able to see, and those were all, my understanding, if I believe, they were Rampart Division police officers, right?
No, that was actually Foothill.
Foothill Division, that's right. Okay.
Right,
so
that was actually Foothill Division, yes.
So up the Tahunga area,
correct.
La Crescenta up, okay, which is interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Of course.
But that was the first time people were really exposed to this idea that these police officers were beating this guy just for the sake of beating him. They had already apprehended him. He didn't pose a threat. He had no gun on him, etc. They could have just chosen to handcuff him, but instead they were. So I think people seeing that for the first time was a giant, like, what's going on here, right? It's not something that had been seen prior to that. And the fact that those police officers were let go out of the Simi Valley courtroom kind of triggered this entire event, and it got very violent that night. I remember I was in college at the time. But I want to ask you, so you're talking about this PTSD, and the police department isn't treating you guys for this, right? They're almost acting as if this is a weakness if you admit you have a problem, which I think is the opposite of what they should be doing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. Police officers are human beings. They're just like anyone else. We experience fear. And we know that the bullets can kill us, but there's a culture out there that's a macho, misogynistic culture that you don't show weakness, you don't show fear. And you'll get officers that are saying, you're a pussy, you can't handle it. They label these officers who are not heavy-handed, who don't use excessive force. And so when you look back at 1992, that year when Daryl Gates said this is an aberration, I had to look up the word aberration, because I was like, what does that mean, aberration? And basically what it means is it doesn't happen.
And you knew that was false.
I knew that was false because anybody that runs away from the police, they know what to expect at the termination of a pursuit. And so that was a flat out lie, of course. And I began to see certain things at that point, but I was still very loyal because I wore the blue uniform. I bled blue.
You bled blue, which is, that's what you do when you're in that. See, I think people what I want people to understand from what you're saying is that when you're in that environment daily on a basis, and you almost get a little bit brainwashed to these ideas that if I don't use excessive force, if I don't pull, shoot now, ask questions later, I'm a bad cop. My friends are gonna make fun of me. They're gonna call me a pussy.
Right.
I mean, people need to understand that this environment's so toxic, and this toxic environment is one of the things, if we're gonna change all of these problems, is one of the things we're gonna have to address and look at. You had something that you mentioned to me called the super pig syndrome.
Right.
So I want you to walk me through what super pig syndrome is. It's an interesting...
Well, the story that I always like to mention was when I was a probationer in Rampart, and I had a Caucasian partner, and we saw, lots of immigrants there, mainly undocumented, as they say, illegal. And he pointed out a car. It was a family, Mexican family, dark-skinned, like me. And he said, look at them wetbacks, I bet they don't have a license. So I didn't say anything, I just kind of stayed quiet because he had some time on and I was the rookie. And
that's shocking to me. He almost looks at you and doesn't even realize what he's saying is racist, or in that it actually is offensive to you. I mean, that's how far gone some of these guys are?
Yes, absolutely. Some of them are deliberately very racist. And I'll go on and I'll talk a little bit more about that, especially about the black community. I'll get into that too. But he says, look at these wetbacks. I bet you they don't have a license. Let's go take away their car, essentially. And so what happened is he pulled them over and gets out the kids. There was about 3 kids, the wife and him. And the kids start crying because they're scared. The man's just kind of with his head down. I'm translating for him. Do you have a license and registration? And of course he didn't have one at that time.
And had he been doing any illegal driving of any sort?
No,
so it was just the fact that he was Mexican. This guy wanted to screw with him.
Right. He wanted to screw with him. He wanted to teach me how to write a ticket and how to deal with people. And that was just the way that he did it. And so I began questioning the male driver, the father, the husband here. And he was just very ashamed. The wife was sad. She had a very angry look. And the kids are crying. And so it was at that moment when I learned, okay, this is why they call us pigs. I didn't really understand why do they call
what does that come from?
What does that come from? And so I woke up at that second right there, and I was like, man, this is pretty messed up.
It's pretty fucked up.
Pretty fucked up, yeah. And so I had another situation too. Again, another Caucasian officer, and just being in that environment, we arrived at a residence there where it was reported by a neighbor as having suspicious activity. So we go inside, we start searching the house, we knocked on the door, of course no one answered. And we went in, it just smelled very bad, very putrid, like feces, urine, and as we're walking around in there, there's cockroaches scurrying all over the place, refried beans, and we went into a room and there was 20 undocumented immigrants. It was a location, a stash house, and I was like, oh my gosh, and he was like, dirty Mexicans, and that's where he came out with my partner. Look at these dirty Mexicans, and so again, I'm hearing this
literally zero self-awareness. Yeah.
Right. There's zero self-awareness, and I'm quiet again. I have family in Mexico. I've been there. I know that these people are poor and that they're trying to come down here for a new life. And so I began seeing that early on. And I also witnessed other officers, some of them people that I knew I was very close to, who would talk about the black people in a very bad way. They referred to them as fun people. And
as what?
Fun people. And
that's a new one on me.
Right. Well,
what's the origins of that?
Well, the origin it's another acronym, but it stands for fucked up N-word. You know. So I mean, I'm not going to say that here right now, but I mean, this is how.
And that was fairly common in the 90s, and
it was very common. Yes, it was very common. So I saw the racism.
Yeah.
I myself, at some point, I became a racist too. How that is possible? You know, a dark-skinned Mexican like me, Chicano.
No, I believe it.
You know, and you become brainwashed. You want to be one of the guys. Okay, you don't want to be an oddball. You want to have backup. You want to be cool. You want to be macho. Accepted, all that, and so that was kind of the insular subculture that we were involved in.
It almost sounds like some of the tools a fascist government uses to control people. You know what I mean? Like some of the things that you're talking about, like seeing yourself, even though you're part of this other group, still being able to other them in order to get along in that environment, right? To feel accepted. That's very scary. And I don't think it's uncommon. I mean, we have a lot of Hispanic police officers, and I've often wondered at some of these protests when I see them, like, how is this like a thing? Like, how is it that brown officers and black officers are in that environment doing what they're doing? And I did speak candidly with an LAPD officer that was African American, and he did mention to me that there was racism within the department, that he'd been targeted for racism. And I was like, then why are you still part of the systemic racist culture? And he kind of had a pause, and he didn't really have an answer for me other than, this is my job. So I guess, you know, I could see what you're saying. Like, if you're in that environment, it's your job, you're doing it. Sometimes it's hard to step away and look in from the outside at what's going on. That takes a tremendous amount of will, I think, which is obviously something you were able to eventually do.
Well, yes, but I was already gone. I wasn't in there.
Oh, right. Okay.
When you're in there,
yeah,
you have to play that game.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I'm not going to do this, because then you get blackballed. You won't have your partners backing you up, like the great Serpico. Okay, what happened to him?
Yes, let's talk about Frank Serpico for a second. So for folks that don't know who Frank Serpico is, he's probably the original lamplighter. He was with the New York Police Department in 1971. He came out and talked about the corruption that was going on, and court cases ensued. And obviously he was very much retaliated against for what he did. So he was very brave, and I think you know, still at it, right? You speak with Frank? Or?
Yes, well, you know, through Twitter, and I've spoken to him personally on the phone with him too before.
It was before his time, right?
He was way before his time. I mean, the guy is amazing. You know, there'll never be another person like him. I believe that, especially at that time period, early 70s. Corruption was everywhere. Graft was a part of the NYPD. Everybody
from top to bottom.
From the top to bottom, all the way up to the chief, the mayor, all these people that knew that this was a way of doing business.
Right.
And the same goes today with modern law enforcement, just like when Daryl Gates tried to hide the ass whipping that they gave Rodney King. Well, this is an aberration. This goes on. And
he knew it wasn't the exception to the rule. He knew it was the rule, yet he also knew that if people thought that was the case, they would not continue to support the LAPD. So.
Correct. And that's the problem here, is that, you know, we've made these police officers be like heroes. We worship them. And I think that's very misguided, because they're human beings. They fuck up too. They make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we put them up there so when they make mistakes, they're not counseled correctly, because they're supposed to be perfect, you know, or it's covered up, you know, whatever it is that they're doing.
Right.
And so Frank exposed the elephant in the room. I mean, it was just a massive elephant. It's like tantamount to this whole Catholic Church scandal.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Where you had the popes, you had all these priests. Everybody knew what was happening to these children, to people who were killed, all on behalf of religion. So you have these professions of being a priest, being a cop, where, you know, they're very heavily into the code of silence. They're very much controlled by these insular subcultures where you don't say shit.
That's right. And in fact, let's talk about that. Something else you mentioned to me when I was speaking with you earlier is this insular, what you call the insular code of silence.
Culture, right.
It's the culture, right? So let's talk a little bit about what breeds that and what maintains it and keeps it in check.
Well, it's just like anything else. Let's say you have an abusive dad, maybe touching the child or something like that. There's all these threats that are going on, you know, that no one's going to believe you. Everyone's going to turn against you. No one's going to have your back, and you're going to be labeled eventually, you know, as a psych case, as a nut case, which puts you in a potential situation to be fired, which is what happened with 5 years ago, Christopher Dorner.
Right.
All right, here's a black man. He was also a naval officer. He had his shit pretty much together, but he reported a female officer, and then all of a sudden he felt the full weight of law enforcement come down. Thousands of officers all over the country. They hunted him down. They went and killed him in Big Bear, and I can understand what he did. You know, his anger. There's no excuse for killing, especially children, innocent civilians, and even police officers. But they drove this man to the edge, and he snapped. And you have a lot of officers that do that. In many cases, they don't do what Christopher Dorner did. What they do is they eat their guns.
Right.
You know, they kill themselves, they commit suicide, they can no longer live with the shame and guilt. And I myself, I was like that at one time. I was very despondent, you know, when I left LAPD, because I was having all kinds of personal problems. After the riots, about a year or two later, I went undercover.
That's right, you were a narcotics officer, right?
Yes, I was out there buying drugs in South Central Los Angeles.
Also, I would imagine in that culture when you're so the narcs as we used to call them, I don't know if they still call them that, would go undercover inside the gang. So you would be, I would imagine, even at some point having to take drugs to prove that you're not a police officer. There's all kinds of scary things, bad things that could happen to you. So now you're adding that to the PTSD. I can't.
Right, and in South Central Los Angeles, Watts, Compton, all these very high crime areas. So I had my incident where I got the shit beaten out of me, almost killed, had the LA riots, and in between all these other traumatic incidents just from being a patrol officer, and then jumping from the fire into the frying pan, right? I guess
quite literally.
Quite literally.
And didn't your supervisor become addicted to heroin?
Yes, well, I had a supervisor that was in charge of the unit, the Harbor Squad, that somehow early in his career, when he was an undercover officer, he had to do heroin, and he became a heroin addict.
This doesn't seem like the proper way to do law enforcement. You know what I'm saying? What I'm getting at here?
Well, especially, you know, when we're
You're like literally turning the police into the criminals by doing this sort of thing.
Right. And so you look at this situation, it's very, very egregious, so very, very bad, because he was arrested for a misdemeanor. Stealing.
Your supervisor was.
My supervisor. But here we were arresting countless, I'm saying probably thousands of people for felonies, for sales.
Absolutely, and
possession.
for pot, not heroin, right? We have a double standard.
Well, it was for all kinds of things, you know. But basically for heroin, for cocaine, meth, all that, those are the serious felonies. The pot was a felony for sales. Or for possession for sales of a large quantity. You know, obviously we would get people with personal use, and that was the misdemeanor.
That was my question.
Right. But you know, here we were arresting people for the same things that he was doing.
Right. So they were getting 25 years or whatever, and he gets a misdemeanor that has no time attached at all, because there's
That's correct.
Yeah, I got what you're saying there. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on right now with the LA Sheriff's Department. I know different than the police department, but still a lot of the same, I would imagine, insular types of attitudes that are going on. So we recently have another lamplighter coming out of the Compton area for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and he is talking to us about how the fact there's a gang inside the LA Sheriff's Department. They're called the Executioners. They've been responsible for all kinds of things that he's been exposing. And I watched the deposition from one of the officers that was involved with one of the shootings down there. And the lawyer asked this guy, do you have ill feelings towards African Americans? And he's also a Hispanic officer. And in the video, you'll see the officer just sits there in absolute silence for at least 30 seconds. He's just, and he doesn't answer the question. So when I watched this, I thought to myself, one thing importantly that I thought was important, that he's thinking, okay, I can't really lie now because that would be perjury. I'm a police officer, I can't perjure myself. But if I answer this question honestly, I'm in big trouble. I mean, it tells me right there that this guy's clearly thinks he's a racist. He knows he's a racist. He's serving in the sheriff's department.
Do you have any ill feelings in general against African Americans?
This to me is like this is the crux of what we're facing right now with law enforcement. So walk me through a little bit of what's going on in that guy's head, because I feel like you've been in those circumstances, and how we possibly can maybe fix some of this. And then I also would like to have your thoughts on the sheriff's department and some of the gangs that they have going on. They're not just the executioners, but we have the Linwood Vikings, the Banditos, etc.
Well, I can't say for sure certain to read into the officer's mind. I'll go based upon what I think. What if they ask me, I did become a racist. Okay. So I would now, not then, of course, answer that truthfully, because
you would have said yes.
Now I would. That I was back then.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But just being in those environments day in and day out, and being with not just white officers, but black officers who are also racist, Latino officers, it becomes an us versus them mentality. We're the good guys, these are the bad guys, these ghetto people, these vital people are shit. And that's generally the outlook of law enforcement. Look at these people, they're a bunch of dirty ass cockroaches.
That's really painful.
Or like
to listen
my
to.
partner, who says these dirty Mexicans, and here they are huddled up, these poor human beings. They're hungry, they've urinated on themselves.
But that's exactly right. Don't they understand that so much of this is related to poverty? Like, does that ever cross?
I don't think it crosses the mind. I don't think that they don't talk about these things in the academy. To have better people skills, or to have training at roll call, for example, to talk about, let's learn how to talk about these people. Let's learn how to work about our own internal racism, because all that's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal behavior when you're in that system and you're an idealistic person like I was. I really thought I was gonna save the world, change things, arrest the bad guys. Right. I did not think I would become the bad guy. That's the puzzling thing about the whole matter is that you change and you don't even see it.
You don't even see it because you're in it at that moment.
You're in there, and there's so much negativity, so much toxicity that it's very hard to prevent that racism. What I think would work is writing a 20-page essay why I'm not a racist.
Yeah.
Why we want to stop racism. A little dissertation would be good to
just even having the conversation
to talk about that. Yeah, because and then who's a racist. Well, I ain't writing this fucking bullshit. I ain't.
It'll come right out. Yeah.
I'm not going to appease to these blacks or whatever, Mexicans. I don't have to learn about their culture. This fun thing, right? I'm not going to go there. And so right there you have your answer. And so if law enforcement is truly to grow, to become better, it's not about training. None of this is about, it's a training issue.
Okay, that's an interesting
But they always
point.
try to make it a training issue.
Alex Villanueva campaigned on that, that it's a problem with training.
Well, right, and there's training, but it's more of a cultural issue.
It's cultural, yeah.
Because if you don't change it, you're not going to get to the root of the problem, okay? Right. And it's like, the church, the Catholic Church, and I don't have nothing against the Catholic Church. I was raised as a Catholic, okay? Because some people are saying, burn that dude, or he has a demon in him or something, right? But no, it's a culture where it's gone on for the ages. What's happening with law enforcement didn't just start. It's been going on.
No, so is that connected to the gang situation then in your mind?
Absolutely, it is.
Because I was thinking that.
Yeah, it's there. The police always want to say we're the baddest gang. Okay, we're the baddest gang. We're the toughest gang.
There's some truth to that.
Right. And if you saw the movie Training Day, that was based upon the Rampart District.
I did not realize that. Okay.
Yes, it was based upon the Rampart District. These officers here are very, very racist. They're very angry. They're sociopaths.
They're sociopaths.
Okay? Right. And some of them actually want to kill people. Okay. I worked with a partner. He had like about 9 kills as a rookie. And the only time I would see a reaction out of him was when a 415 man with a gun call would come out. And then it was pedal to the metal. He wanted to be the first one to shoot someone.
Yeah.
And so there's all these debilitating issues.
Hey, hang on. Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So that kind of a call means that the suspect is armed and he feels like gives him license to
Disturbing the peace.
Oh, disturbing
Right.
the peace.
Disturbing the peace is the 415.
Okay.
And someone's out there with a gun. It's kind of a generic thing. Someone's acting like
But
a fool
he
with
feels
a gun.
like that means I can just shoot when I get there at whatever this guy's doing. It
Absolutely.
doesn't. Wow.
Absolutely. It's a license to kill because you brought a gun. Okay? And so
And
at
what
any
if there
time,
really isn't a gun? It's one of these ghost guns that they're talking about now.
Well, that's always happened, where the officer say he reached for his waistband or he clenched his
How
fist.
often do they lie about that?
Well, I saw it happening
You saw it
myself. I saw it happening. I saw people getting killed too. It was pretty gruesome, and in the end, it was all explained away. My shootings that I had, I was walked through by the officer involved shooting team. They told me, okay, this is where you were standing. This is where you were at.
So they're
This
literally
is-
telling you what to say and do to get out of having a problem.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And, there's no reason for that. You just need to say the truth. This is what really happened.
Well, but they don't want you to tell the
they
truth
don't want to.
because-
It's just like Daniel Prude over there
Yeah.
in New York, Rochester. They hid it as this police chief did.
That's right.
He was like, oh, shit, I'm going to be the next person on the news.
Yeah.
Not thinking that this is going to be the next George Floyd incident that comes out.
That's right.
And so when we look back, when you were talking about the sheriffs and this very toxic environment of gang cops, a lot of them have joined because they want to be one of the guys, and they have the same hazing rituals as the gangbangers. They beat up the police officers, the deputies. Crash, what used to be the
Chasing ink is one of the terms that I can't think of his name. The lamplighter from the sheriff's department. I think his name is also Alex, actually.
I don't know.
Anyway, but one of the things he talked about is this idea of chasing ink. So if I beat up this guy, these hazing rituals that you're talking about, get a kill, I get this kind of tattoo, and they have these specific tattoos that they're getting.
That's right. And so it was actually Bob Olmsted who was one of the higher-ups that he came out against Lee Baca.
That's right.
And he was talking about this for the longest, and no one listened to him.
He was talking about the Linwood Vikings originally?
The Linwood Vikings and
well, there were others too, I guess.
There was a lot.
There was a lot,
There
okay.
were several of them. And, I had personal conversations with Bob, especially when he was running for office against McDonald. O'Donnell?
McDonald.
Yeah, O'Donnell. Yeah, O'Donnell.
The guy before Villanueva.
Yeah, O'Donnell, right. And when I would listen to him speak during his campaign speeches, because I followed him around because I was very enthralled by his courage.
Yeah.
And just him coming forward and facing this, which led to the arrest of the nation's...
Paul Tanaka.
Paul Tanaka,
That's right.
the head of internal affairs. I mean, there was
No.
nothing good about that department.
That's right.
And so this is what Alex inherited.
The head of internal affairs. That's
The head internal, yeah, his last name was Kerry.
That's right.
That
So I mean,
commander.
that tells you how corrupt to the core the system is.
Right. And when you look at the sheriff's department, it has been like that. It's the supervisors from LA County, they've known. The mayor, they know. Everybody's known all this stuff. It's just like the Catholic Church again. Everybody knows about the molestations and all this madness. And so no one wanted Alex when he ran for office. I'm sure you know this too.
Yeah,
that
no, I mean,
for him to win.
I interviewed Alex when he was running for office,
Right.
and he was campaigning on talking about the gang environment in the sheriff's department and saying we need to reform it and all of those things, but he hasn't done any of that.
Right. And so what I do know, because I still want to believe in Alex.
Okay.
As crazy as it sounds, and people
No,
are saying,
I
you know
mean-
what, you're just a fucked up pig too, or whatever, whoever's watching this. But I saw him. He was very brave, okay? He was supporting Bob Olmsted, and as a lowly lieutenant, he stood up to these people, So I admired that, him and his wife.
Yeah.
And so what he inherited was a mafia-like department.
Okay, yes.
Where
I agree with
every month, every week, some shit is happening. He's probably going like this all the
What do
time.
I do
Oh
now?
my
Yeah.
God, what else is going on now? The deputies being knuckleheads, taking a picture of Kobe's and his dead daughter's body parts.
Right.
You know, the other people that died there. I mean, these gangbanger cops, you know, beating each other up at the Compton station. You know, he has really no control over this other than, you know, to put on a face that shows he's trying to do something. You know, he's trying to take leadership.
Okay.
But this department is out of control.
It's out of control.
It's out of control, you know. And so I'm hoping that, you know, at some point in time he's going to change. What I do know too is that everybody was against Alex. So it's hard for him to work with people when they're telling him one thing, but he knows that they're really not for him. They want to see him fail.
They want to see him fail.
And as far as, you know, this whole thing coming out, they've known about it. Again, they've known about it. They've hidden it. They haven't dealt with it. You know, this problem was way before Villanueva came into office.
Oh, no, they were way.
You know, and so
way before.
Now with technology, all this is coming out. They can't hide anything.
They can't hide anything.
You have the whistleblowers coming out,
That's right.
and so. It's a very precarious situation for him.
It is precarious. So let me ask you this. The problem I'm having with Alex now is this. I think that he's not being honest about what's going on. So in light of what's happening in the Compton division with this whistleblower coming out and talking about the executioner's gang, Alex's response has been to deny that the gang exists. And I don't believe that for a second. There's a history of gangs there within the sheriff's department. Like you said, it wasn't just the Linwood Vikings, it was many of them. And when we talk about these gangs, it's not just that they're beating up on brown and black people and being racist. They are definitely doing that. But they're also involved in many types of criminal activities, right? So they're literally criminals with badges, and they get a one-up on the criminals they're supposed to be policing, and they're engaging in some of the same types of activity. So what I don't understand about Alex at this point is why isn't he just being honest about that? He knows there's a history there. He knows he hasn't cleaned it up. I can't believe that he doesn't believe what this whistleblower is saying. It's insurmountable. The guy has photos of the tattoos. He has evidence. It's not. And now let's talk about this week. We had an execution. I believe that those two sheriffs that were killed, I mean, you see the video. The guy walks right up to the car and he point blank this to me looks like a gang retaliation. It looks like a hit. It does not look random to me. I mean, I would like to know what your thoughts are on that, too.
It was definitely a hit.
Okay.
It's definitely a hit. Shooting in the head, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get more explicit.
Like, it was, whoa, yeah.
Trying to kill someone. You know, I do private investigations now, and I do civil rights cases. Have worked.
Right, you were in Ferguson, you've been in Baltimore. We'll talk about that in a minute, too.
Right,
yeah.
but mainly here in Los Angeles and throughout California where I'm licensed, I've done these very complex investigations for many attorneys, and so I've had a chance not just to look at the police side, but now the other side, you know, where I'm dealing with the families whose loved ones have been killed. I'm with the activists. I'm actually an activist now too. I've joined with them because, you know, they need to have a voice of someone who's been there, who knows what's going on. They can't tell me that this stuff doesn't go on. It's very disingenuous. It's like saying a priest is not molesting a certain person.
Why is Alex doing that?
Well, you know, it's kind of like almost normal to lie. I mean, why did the president...
I'm out.
Oh, God, you scared me. I was so deep in thought. I'm like, what? What's wrong?
It just... Okay, it's back.
Okay, Colin, you're going to have to edit that part. What happened?
It just went out. It might have been just your monitors. It might have been a timer thing. Anyway, we're still recording.
Okay, so...
You were just saying it's kind of like the priests, and then that's...
Okay, I'll pick it up with, so why is Alex doing that, or whatever. Okay, ready?
Yeah, go for it, anytime.
God, I was so deep in that conversation. I'm sucked in right now. Okay. So then why is Alex lying about this, about the gangs existing? Why do you think that is?
You know, as police officers, and this just goes for the lowly cop up until the chief, you know, we have to maintain an image that the police is under control. They cannot come out and say, you know what, we have dirty ass pigs out there robbing, killing, murdering that are traumatized. That's really what's happening.
That's really what's happening.
We have traumatized officers out there who are taught to cover their asses. Okay, don't talk to the press. You know, keep your mouth shut, and that's it. And so, you know, he's already fighting. He's like a boxer in the ring that is, you know, hanging on the ropes, you know, with everything that's going on. You got one supervisor here, another one. They're just beating him up. And so just like the chief with Daniel Prude,
Yeah.
all right, it's pretty clear that he hit it. The mayor over there hit it too. I mean, everybody goes into cover-up mode.
Yeah.
As old Daryl Gates said, this is an aberration. This doesn't happen. Well, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. And I'm not saying that that's what he did specifically, because I don't know, but I'm surmising, because there's so much damn problems, with them going after his hiring of certain people, his handling, his issues with the supervisors, which I can understand, with that. They didn't want him, so why would he want them for?
And by the supervisors, you mean the Board of Supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors, right.
They've actually, one of them asked for his resignation this week. I don't know if you saw that.
There was a couple of them, yes, that asked for that. And so they know that this is happening, but at the same time, Alex, being in this leadership position, he's trying to not be pushed out. To try to maintain as much control as possible with all this just blowing up in his face and the sheriff's department being exposed just exactly how bad it is.
It's bad. It's bad. So I'm of the belief, and let me run this by you, I'm of the belief at this point that it cannot be salvaged. And I know that might seem like an extremist position for some folks, and let me tell you why. I think all of these things, the system itself is so toxic, it's so... The gangs, culture, the things you're talking about, the insular code of silence, all of these things are so ingrained, I don't think you can reform them. I think we need to start over. And I know that's probably, some people would say, an extreme position, but I understand why people are saying, abolish the police. What they're saying here is like, this is so screwed up and so messed up. We can't trust our police officers. Yes, we want somebody that investigates serial killers, rapists, these things. No, we don't want these guys running around being criminals, being racist, shooting people for no reason, being violent. This is being like a military. It's almost as if the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department have become like we're being occupied by a military presence in a lot of ways with the way they handle their business. And I know that's something else you talked about, because it didn't always used to be this way. We've seen this ante get upped, through the years, right? And the budget now is, for the LAPD, is now 54% of the city budget. That is absolutely insane. 54%. So they're using all of this money to buy these military type toys.
Or to pay lawsuits.
Or to pay...
The city of New York.
You're right on this. Or to pay lawsuits.
The city of New York has $700 million, almost $1 billion, set aside each year. $700 million. Okay, set aside
to pay lawsuits.
To pay lawsuits.
This is insanity.
Can you imagine that? Yeah.
No, I can't imagine it, but I believe it. I believe it's true. I mean, the litigation against the LAPD is pretty large at this point as well. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do we just blow it up and start over with something, replace it with something that makes more sense? Or do you actually believe that there's still some reforms that can be put in place?
Well, a lot of people are saying they can't change and they don't want to deal with it, especially those who've lost family members to police violence. They've been screaming for the longest. I know that if I lost one of my children, I might retaliate and do something foolish too. I'm not trying to stoke any.
No, I think you're being frank. No, you're being frank.
Right. I would be. I don't care who it was. Someone hurt one of my kids. I give a lot of kudos to these family members that, I've known throughout the years who just lost their children, their loved ones, their sons, daughters, and there was no reason for that. And so this is why these two officers did what they did. And again, I'm not for that. Okay, I was a police officer. I've been shot at. Yeah. I've been stabbed. I've been ran over. All these things have happened to me. So I know that I can speak with authority on
what that's like.
Rather than somebody that says, oh, they should execute this person that did this callous murder, and that we shouldn't talk about this because we're bringing more violence. We need to talk about it. Yeah. Suppressing this here and not talking about the violence that was projected against these two deputies is precisely why these problems go on and continue, because we let them fester, just like the racism. We've known that there's been racism forever, but we don't talk about it. We're being forced to talk about it now, but generally speaking, don't talk about that. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right. No, especially, here's the thing, that they could have gone a different route, and they chose not to, right? So they used the ideas of racism in the department as a cudgel, right? They knew it existed. Daryl Gates knew it existed for sure.
Right.
And it never improved since then. It's just always been there, and it was never dealt with. But they used it as a cudgel at this point. So they could have said, we got to do something about this and change the culture. They chose not to. And I would imagine also that the racism is from the top to the bottom. I can imagine that the lieutenants, et cetera, are also came up in that same environment, are also seeing things in a very racist way. So what do we replace the police with then? I mean, what is your idea? You work now, let me talk a little about what you're doing now. So you're doing activism on the other side. So
Yes.
You're a private detective. You work with families that have suffered from police brutality. So I know you've been in Ferguson, you've been in Baltimore, here in Los Angeles. So you absolutely are quite literally on the other side, helping these families out, helping them with their cases against the police department. So, and you have obviously the skills to do that because you've been on both sides.
Right, but
So-
I've also been there as an activist because I wanted to see this myself. I wanted to see these phenomenons of other riots, not just the LA riots that I was in, which was the mother of all riots.
The mother, 92,
but
yeah.
being in Ferguson, being chased down in Baltimore by a really bad super pig who's now currently doing 18 years in Club Fed. Okay, and so really trying to understand and grasp and deal with my own racism, my own issues, and my PTSD, which is still there. And at the same time, trying to help out the police. Okay, I am not against the police. I have sisters, brother-in-laws that are coppers that I love and adore. But I also want to be able to see one day a police department or sheriff's department that treats people good. You know, that could be my kid. Could be your kid or anybody else's. And I venture to say that, you know, these police officers that are out there murdering, because I know a lot of cops who have also lost police children to the police.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it all changes this dynamic, you know, that we, as law enforcement officers, we paint these people as really bad people. So we have to change that way of thinking.
Well, that's an interesting point you're making right now. You paint them as really bad people. It's as if you other them and say, well, they're automatically bad. It justifies anything I do to them, even if that's not true.
Absolutely, yeah. I saw people getting choked out for no reason. Go get that asshole right there. And racial profiling. I mean, it's all there going on. I mean, the people haven't been bitching about this for no reason. It's been happening.
It's absolutely justified.
It's fallen on deaf ears. What needs to change? And traditionally, the police can do no wrong, especially when they're backed by their unions and they're paying the politicians. And, And
the
really,
unions, I think, are a really bad problem. Let's talk about the unions for a second. We had recently, during the Black Lives Matters protest that we've had here, I found some of the Twitter feeds for some of the police unions, and one of their attorneys was on Twitter saying, shoot them all, shoot the protesters, shoot them all. Like, just saying that and not thinking for even a second that was inappropriate or wrong or bad or any of it. She obviously felt comfortable enough to say this publicly. And she was saying this behind videos of protesters. She got called out on it, so she protected her account after that. But I got the screenshots of this. But obviously there's a viewpoint inside the police unions as well, where no matter what, the person that got shot is a criminal. They do that. They you see them do that in the media too. They go after the victim and they make the victim automatically the bad guy no matter what, right?
Absolutely.
They victimize them in ways that are, this person, and it's random stuff. She bounced a check in 2010.
Right, that's the second death, is the character assassination that goes on in the aftermath. Like, they're justified for shooting someone because they wrote a bad check or because they got into it with their wife, and has nothing to do at all.
Or justify the murder, yeah.
Right, but to justify, because they have to have a reason for taking a life.
And it can't possibly be their racism.
Right.
So what do we do?
Well, we need to change the culture. We need to start offering more protection for lamplighters, for truth exposure, whistleblower police officers that are now starting to come out. So if there's good police officers, you can't hide anymore. You have to treat these people as human beings. You're no better than them, and you've been brainwashed, okay? I don't care whether it's on the local level, state, or federal. Okay, these are human beings, and the public isn't going to take this anymore as we can talk.
That's right.
And so what's frightening here is there's an element here which are the people who've been victimized, and there's another element that says it's okay to continue with this treatment of minorities or poor people because they're shit. And so we need to change that. We
I
really
agree,
need to talk about at roll call meetings about racism.
Yeah.
We need to have officers that are able to get rid of this junk that they have in their minds, because they carry it on them all the time. I mean, it's no wonder that they experience domestic violence problems, that they experience all these relationship problems. They're not able to stay faithful. They have all these alcoholism issues. I mean, there's a multitude, a plethora of problems, that most police officers don't ever think that they'll face. They don't. That's not going to happen to me. But in the end, they're a wreck.
Yeah.
And soon after they retire, many of them, they just die because they're that lifestyle of living on the edge and with the adrenaline going through
all
them.
the time,
it just stops. And that's it. They gave their life. There is no blue family. They will crucify you if you bring or you tarnish the badge because you got caught.
Yeah.
Okay, they know this is going on, but you got caught.
You're the one that got caught doing it.
You're the one that brought disgrace to the department.
It's not actually the actions that are bringing the disgrace, it's the fact that you got caught doing the wrong thing.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
It's interesting to me because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was covering one of the protests and I saw one of the police officers did something that was violent. And I said to him, why do you have to be so violent? Why was that necessary? And his response to me was, did I give you a black eye today? I was like, wait, what? As, Jason heard him say, yeah. I mean, I was like, that's your response? Did I give you a black eye today? Do you not see the problem with your response? Like, wow. I mean, what do you even say to that, right?
Well, they don't know what else to say when you confront them. Are you racist? And asking them a simple question like that, they come out with
I really wanted to know, like, why that could have been handled so much differently and
Right. Well, as we see in other countries too, like with the Japanese, their protests that they had this past year, they became very violent too. And the Japanese, no, I'm sorry, it's not the Japanese. It's
in Hong Kong?
Hong Kong,
Okay.
correct. The Hong Kong police, they were known for being very much in control, but they lost it, with the protesters, and they became just as violent too. So I guess it's a human phenomenon. You can have all this training, but when people start fighting, everything goes out the window. I can say that the same thing happened when I was in the riots, LA riots. We encountered all kinds of madness. I was standing there in the SWAT meet right next to Wilshire Station because that's where I was assigned to. The SWAT meet was maybe 200 feet away and up in flames. But just prior to that, I was there trying to catch some looters, and everyone's walking running with furniture, with stereos, all kinds of things. I remember.
It was madness.
It was really bad. I just remember just standing there with my shotgun and watching someone run past me amid the smoke and the smoldering that was going on. I took my shotgun, pow! I whacked him with the stock in the face. And it was just sheer anger, and I took the shotgun without the stock, the wooden stock, and I put it into his mouth, and I was like, I just wanted to make him feel the fear. So that's what goes on in the mentality of some of these officers, that they are pushed to the edge. Doesn't make it right, of course, but it's a psychological thing. And it's not just one officer, it's everybody. Everybody loses their mind, especially when you're in those situations. So the possibility of a civil war happening and it's just escalating, with what's going on, is there.
It is there. And I guess the real problem here is that they're not addressing the underlying issues. For example, those riots would have never broken out if they hadn't beaten Rodney King, or if the police that did that had been reprimanded or punished in some way.
Correct.
What's that say? The riots are the voice of the unheard. That response was understandable given the circumstances, right? That's what led up to it. And I think we're seeing the same thing over and over again, a repeated cycle of that.
Absolutely, because there's so many killings. What we saw with George Floyd.
It's unexcusable,
the officer with his hands in his pocket, just very callous.
Very callous and casually, like, I'm murdering this guy. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah, it's like shocking when you see this stuff and you're like, how is this possible? And how is it this cop isn't being prosecuted for murder? How is this possible?
Right. Well, the departments are the ones that really failed this officer. He wasn't able to continue because everybody does the same thing. Okay.
So that's what we need to get people to understand. For every one of these guys that's caught doing something like this, you're basically saying all of these officers are doing it. They're just not caught yet.
Well, I'm not going to say all of them.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
But there's a lot of them, yes, that will use those type of tactics. They'll use a chokehold. They'll throwing
And they're
kicks.
told that's perfectly acceptable to do.
Well, you know,
Or-
what I was taught in the academy is when you're in the fight, you have to really use that extra force because
Okay.
otherwise you're going to kick your ass,
Okay.
they'll take away your gun and shove it up your ass. Okay, so that's the reason for using that. But I mean, it is exaggerated sometimes. I mean, the policy is double tap to the chest, headshot. You know, so that's an execution, right?
That is
there.
an execution,
It's deliberate. That's the training that's there. So you really can't fault the officer. You have to fault the training here too. And I'm not saying that we don't need to use deadly force. There are times like in Las Vegas, okay, or one
Right.
of these.
But we're seeing these guys are using deadly force against folks that where it's obviously completely
Or mentally ill, right?
or mentally or completely unwarranted. Like
Right.
I know a couple of the issues that we've had in South Central have been against guys. One guy was a mental issue
Mhm.
that police officers should not be being sent, in my opinion, to issues of mental health, right? But the other guy was walking down the street holding a knife that they thought, but it turns out it wasn't even, the blade wasn't even out. It was like, it was a, what do you call those where they're box cutters where it wasn't out yet, but it was
Right.
in. But they shot him and killed him. That seems to me completely unnecessary and overwhelming force as well. Like, and you look at the body cam video and you see it and you're like I get that there's an issue of fear there, but again, they're being trained, like they could have used a taser, they could have used...
Well, there's fear, and then
You know what I'm
there's
saying?
some that want to be what they call ghetto gunfighters. They're
Ghetto
cowboy.
gunfighters.
Ghetto gunfighter. Ghetto
Good Lord.
gunfighter means if you kill someone, yeah, I've killed like about 3 or 4.
Oh,
you know?
shit.
And so some of these guys, like these executioners, they love
Yeah,
that
in
name.
the sheriff's department.
Okay.
They picked that name for a reason, right?
Right, exactly. You know, I mean, why do they have to say the executioners? Okay, I mean, hello.
Yeah.
Okay, we are executioners. We're the
Right?
good guys.
And have you seen the tattoo that they have? So
Yes.
the tattoo, just so the eyes can see it, is a skull and crossbones, and there's like it's almost like a Nazi style hat, and it has the Compton initials on the hat, right? So I mean, it's pretty hardcore. When you look at this tattoo, you're like,
Right. They've
it's-
always been around, just like the gangs too. I mean, Rampart Crash had
Rampart,
theirs.
yeah.
You know, that was my time period. The
Yeah,
famous
so the 90s,
crash,
yeah.
right? And you know, it all comes from that time period. Nothing's really changed when you look at these stories, except now we have whistleblowers, truth exposers, lamplighters that are coming out and saying, yes, this is what's happening. It's very difficult to say he's crazy or she's lying.
Right. Not anymore because we have camera footage.
Right,
Like,
we have-
you cannot. The phone camera has been the great equalizer in so many ways. We're seeing, I think, for the first time live, like this is what's happening on the daily basis, and you're right, they can't deny it.
Right, they can't deny it. And, you know, we really do need to revamp the system. It has to be because, like I said, you cannot continue like this. There will be a revolution. It's already happening
It's happening right now,
as we
exactly.
speak, that people
Yeah.
are just pissed, and they are going to continue to kill police officers. There are people right now planning to hurt law enforcement officers, and then there's law enforcement that's out. Bring it on.
Bring-
you know,
yeah.
let's
Let's
shoot
have a
it out.
war.
Let's have a war. Okay. And so when you have those type of factions there where common sense kind of goes out the window, it becomes very volatile. Kind of like
very
what's going
dangerous,
on in
yeah.
the Middle East right now.
Yeah,
Okay?
very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. People start getting executed. They get targeted.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all these things happen.
Yeah.
And so we really need to change that. We need to get women more involved too, because women
Okay.
tend to be the equalizers too. They have a more calming effect. Women can, you know, usually be
Less
cool.
macho.
Less macho, except for my mom. You know.
Wait, have you met me? No, I'm kidding.
Right. You know, but you know, the women too, officers, they're going through so much, and I'm in close contact, especially with the Women of Canada police officers, who they're going through the same exact crap over there too.
Right.
You know, the same type
Yeah.
of male-dominated, misogynistic, racist crap. So it's not just here in the U.S.
No,
it's over
no.
there too. It's all over the
It's
place.
global, yeah.
It's global, yes.
So I want to end on something positive. So can you tell us one of the good stories that you're working on right now in your activism that would be just making the world a better place?
Yes, I've been working with a group called The Wounded Blue.
The Wounded Blue.
The Wounded Blue,
Okay.
yes. And this is a foundation that was started by Randy Sutton and Jason Harney. They're both former Las Vegas police officers. This has been a labor of love for them. And they asked me and one of my good friends, Stuart Guy, who was a victim of the North Hollywood shootout. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that. Oh my God, yeah, that's right.
Right, he was one of the officers that was shot.
That was some crazy stuff. That was the one where they were trying to leave the bank and they were going behind the car, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And they had like an little arsenal in the car.
Yes,
yeah,
my friend was hit by a couple of AK-47 rounds. But they started this foundation that helps officers deal with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so we need knowledge of that. You know, I did not know that I was sick, mentally disturbed. I just thought I was crazy. You know, I remember when, you know, all this was happening, and let me just plug also my friend's book, Alan Cates. He wrote a book called Cop Shock, which was the first book ever.
Cop Shock?
Cop Shock, right.
Okay.
That book, along with The Wounded Blue, and they're on Twitter, and you can just Google them, helps out with understanding what exactly is post-traumatic stress disorder. How does it affect an officer's mind? What causes the PTSD, the suicides, all these things which an officer needs to know.
Right.
Because the department isn't going to help them.
No.
Okay, you lose your mind.
Obviously, they're just covering all this up.
You lose your mind, you start having problems. You know, if you develop PTSD from, let's say, an incident, you get shot, you might become an abuser.
Yeah.
Okay, you might go out there and kill people because, like me, after I got my ass kicked, I didn't see bald-headed people the same. I was like, oh, there's a gangbanger. He's going to kick my ass. I need to beat the shit out of him before they do me. And I did that. I actually did crazy stuff like that and started a riot in the projects, right? Because I was having a bad day. And then I was after, oh my God, what did I just do?
What did I just do?
Yeah. What did I just do? And so you can't take that back. So the departments, the municipalities, the cities, the governments, they need to really focus on the, you know, police officers' mental health. Okay, that is so important.
Yeah.
And then, you know, lastly too, we need to have protection for the lamplighters. Okay, there has to be
100%.
protection for the whistleblowers.
You have to have a safe space to come forward and tell your truth about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot have internal affairs investigators going off. Why didn't you come and report this earlier?
Yeah.
You know, and we're going to bring you up on charges now. And they turn that around on you, quite literally. You know,
which is not supposed to be what they're doing. They're supposed to be investigating the bad police officers and doing something about them. But they're it's sort of like the HR department in a corporation, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. It takes a lot to get a police officer fired, you know, especially when you have the police unions and all these special laws that were created to insulate them from any accountability. You know, so we have to have those protections. You know, imagine if Serpico had that kind of protection instead of treating him like a leper.
That's right.
Okay, or any of these police officers.
I was like, Frank Serpico is lucky to be alive.
Right.
I mean, I think they didn't one of them actually go after or try to kill him at one point? Am I wrong on that? I'm trying to remember the story now.
Well, the story is that he went to go do a drug deal. He was working as a narc, and backup didn't show up. So
that's what happened. The backup didn't show up, so they left him out there to die, and knowing that, that's just
and there's so many officers out there. A good police officer can not usually stay as a police officer in law enforcement. People will say, "Well, I know good cops." Well, the good cops know who the bad cops are. The good cops know who's framing,
that's right,
planning dope, killing, murdering, racist. Okay, they all know this. So
and if they stay silent, then they're part of the problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there has to be these type of special balances, checks and balances as they call them, to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Right.
But you cannot have a good old boy system investigating, like me, for example. I had one use of force, and the internal affairs investigator, and this is a department of 10,000 people, knew me. He was one of my training officers. Now he was a sergeant. Okay. Hey man, you know, I got you covered on this. That's what he told me. Okay? So it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah. It didn't work for the Catholic Church, and it's not going to work for the police because the police are not saints.
Right.
They're not priests.
No.
Okay?
They're the opposite.
They're the opposite, exactly. So if we're seeing what can happen with priests, we can see with, you know, police officers what can also happen here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming in and talking with us, Alex. I think this is really eye-opening. I think it's important for people to hear this side of the story, right? It's easy for us to be out of the protests and and being very angry about what we're seeing, but I think it helps us to be more informed about what's going on inside a lot of these guys' minds, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, right? Because it gives us a more informed way to look at making decisions about how we're going to clean up this toxic environment, etc. So thanks for coming in, and I want to wish you luck with the activism you're doing. I think it's awesome that you're out there helping these families from police violence and doing what you're doing. It's really important work.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen here, the police here, I'm a former police officer. You guys see what's happened here now? Okay, this killing has gotten out of control. We have people here now from Ferguson. Kamala Harris, you need to listen. You guys that go by the code of silence, this needs to stop.
That's right.
Okay? You know, we have the technology now. This is the year 2014. Those of you that are back there know that there's a lot of racism that's going on with the department. Okay? We cannot any longer hide behind the badge because we're going to get caught. Think about Rampart. Think about the current LASD sheriff scandal where 21 deputies were arrested for framing.
That's right.
There was nobody good from bottom to top, all because of the so-called chain of command. The chain of command does not work, especially when it's bad at the top. And then we sell out these poor cops, some of them that are suffering from PTSD. That's right. Some that are coming back from the war, we're putting them here on our streets. They're killers. All right? I don't hate you guys. These guys don't hate you either. They hate the brutality.
That's right.
Thank you. I'm here for Jose de la Trinidad. This guy was a family man. Has a beautiful wife who loves him to this very day with the children. Not a day goes by where, you know, these families don't think about these loved ones. This could be you guys too.
That's right.
Okay? You know, we don't need to start a revolution here that kills people. But we're on the verge of genocide. People are tired of this.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.